Hey y'all, and yes, I said y'all. I guess I've become a true Southerner now.
Okay.
This is Lady P. I'm here with you with Teachers Are Talking. And you know what? I got some of my good friends. I got my sister from another mother here. I got a lady that's taught me, when I say almost everything I needed to know about education, she's the one. She is the one. I got him here with me, and we're gonna get into some heavy stuff. But before we do, let me introduce you to him. First, to my right, I have Miss Regina. This is the one that taught me everything, y'all. She knows everything.
She taught us.
Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have been in education for 30 years.
30 plus, y'all.
30 plus. I'm trying not to
Good,
tell my age.
She look good, don't you?
But I've been a teacher for many years. I was in the classroom for, I say, 28 of those years, and taught special ed all of those years. Mm-hmm. Did a behavior improvement class early in my career. So have taught many things, have done many things, learned a lot from this lady and from everybody.
She's the one, I'm telling you.
Yeah. And right now I'm in high school. I'm a transition specialist.
Okay. Now, y'all, my sister from another mother. Literally. They mixed us up so many, even to this day. Those that we get from her school and the students come to my school, Miss Franklin? You sound like Miss Franklin. And then my sister, I'm telling you. So, Krista, tell them a little bit. Who are you?
I am Krista Franklin. This is my 23rd year in education. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership, secondary education. I am a no-nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
She ain't lying.
She means that, y'all.
I'll get up in your butt.
She means that.
But I love students. I love students in the inner city. I believe that is my heart's call, and I want to do what I can to help them to succeed.
Yeah,
that's my goal in life.
Yeah, I mean she has tough love, but
very tough.
Yes, but it's all in a good place.
I love her.
They know that I love them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And last but not least,
hey y'all,
we have Dejanay. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say Miss Gardner.
You can.
Okay.
Kids call me Miss G.
Dejanay. This is a no-nonsense social worker here.
Listen, I try my best.
Tell them about you. Who are you?
I am Dejanay L. Gardner. I am recently been licensed as a clinical social worker, so now I can practice independently, doing therapy. So I'm kind of moving on up in the social work realm. I've had experience working in psychiatric hospitals, doing behavioral health, mental health case management with Medicaid, and now I currently work for Fort Worth ISD, and I'm a crisis interventionist at a middle school, and Lord have mercy.
Hey.
It's work.
It's special people to work in middle school.
Come on.
We all have been special. Some of us are still special.
I'm very special.
But y'all, before we get started, let me talk to you for a little bit. We have something going on called mental illness that we don't talk about, we do not discuss, but yet we see it every single day. We see it on the news, we see it with our family, we see it everywhere, but we don't talk about it. So today, with my wonderful people here, we're going to get into it. And we're going to talk a little bit about the dark secret that we never discussed. She's just crazy, that's all. She's just crazy. Or why Johnny's swinging from the chandeliers in your classroom. Why? So, now, let me give you a little background. Mental illness, if we go by the technical definition, it's a condition that affects a person's behavior, thinking, and feeling or mood. That's a lot. It covers your thinking, how you think, how you behave, behavior issues, and how you feel and your mood. If you have mood swings. Now, Some of those it consists of depression. People now say, I'm just depressed. Are you? Are you really clinically depressed? Anxiety. Everyone's saying, oh, I have anxiety. Do you really? Bipolar. A lot of people claiming that now. I'm bipolar. But do we really want to claim these things? ADHD. We see that a lot, especially in classrooms. Johnny running. Please sit down, Johnny. Johnny, sit down. He up again. Hey! Johnny, please. Johnny. Sit down. Johnny up again. Johnny, quit touching them. ADHD. Can't focus. Autism. And autism, that's one, that's a tough one, because it can range from just sitting there staring at you to very intelligent, very highly intelligent, but missing something. Missing something that's very important. OCD. We see people like that all the time. But who would have thought that's a mental illness? You know? Let me straighten this up. We can't have this messed up. But that's a mental illness. And schizophrenia. We don't even really talk about that one. That's one that, we really don't say anything about. But we have 50 million students in the U.S.
Wow.
50 million. Out of that 50 million, 5 million have mental disabilities, mental disorders. That is a lot of students. 5 million? Now, they say, the studies show that over half of them start showing signs at 14. That's the age that when we get them in middle school and high school. 14 years old, and they're showing signs of schizophrenia. They're showing signs of bipolarism. They're showing signs of anxiety and depression. Now, we see this in our room, but what do? How are we handling this? Especially if it's their first sign. Now, the question I want to ask the group, let's start with this. We know that there's 5 million kids out there. We probably touch maybe 20 a day or more, depends on how your class is set up. How can we improve this situation? Because these kids are here, they're coming to us. Some of them we know, some of them we don't know. How can we improve this? Crystal, how can we improve this?
So the first thing that I would say is, I did a little reading and it said teachers are gatekeepers. So it's like, you may be like the first line of contact. You may be like the first eyes on a possible situation. Just as a teacher who's just been doing this for a very long time, one thing that you can do is just start out by having great classroom management, having procedures in place, having systems in place, teaching students how to do particular things, and being very clear about your expectations, very clear about rewarding them for doing the right thing, and being consistent in your consequences after they have not followed the expectations. When we have clear expectations in the classroom, we are better able to identify if it really is something extra going on, or whether I just have prepared a way for a kid not to be ready, he's operating within the lane that I provided. It's not anything wrong with him, it was something wrong with the way I set up.
How does that structure help that kid, or help that environment? How would that help them? Just saying, okay, we have our procedures, ABC, how does that help that kid?
Well, one way, like as I said, it helps us to identify so we can get him some additional help and checks. But another way, if the student is having difficulties, meaning that they don't have the cognitive ability to think through a situation, you help them build those skills by teaching them through routine and through practice of this is the proper way of doing it.
Right. Miss Regina Turner.
I like what she said about teaching them the proper way and modeling for students what they should do.
Yeah.
I also think that you need to develop a relationship with the students as well.
Right.
And a lot of times they'll tell you what's going on in their lives a lot of times when you build a relationship with them. And it might be as much as, hey, how's it going? Because you know how we do. They call me nosy. But I've gotten to learn a lot about the kids. Kids nowadays will just tell you, I interview, well, let me back up. I interview kids because I'm a transition specialist. So my goal is to make sure they have 4 goals to be successful post-secondary. And so we just sit there and talk. And so I was talking with the kid, how's your health? And he said, well, you know, I'm bipolar. I'm bipolar and I have depression. And it's like, okay, so these kids, they basically know that there's something going on with them. Some of them are on medication. Well, this particular person was on medication. But you have to build a relationship with them and let them know also, in addition to the structure, that there's a safe place where they can talk to you.
So the ones you get, they already have their diagnosis.
Some of them.
Okay, the ones that don't have a diagnosis, how do you handle that? And do you know, or do they know?
Sometimes you kind of know. You know, you can monitor student behavior, and when there are things that students exhibit certain types of behaviors, you're like, okay. Well, sometimes you could just see the anxiety on the student's face. This little boy, he was just, you know, and he kept, and I was like, you know, is everything okay? Because we're just talking.
Right.
And then he was telling me how many people lived in the house and just went on and on. But for those people that are not diagnosed, we have an LSSP on our campus, you know, and sometimes teachers will come and ask you, something is not quite right. He's done this, and this, because they've documented, they've kept records. Now sometimes you can get to researching and the student that you thought was not diagnosed, you'll find that way back there's some records stating something. So because a student has moved a lot, you know, does not have a stable family home, they can't, before they can have a meeting to put everything together, they've moved. So you have to, it takes a person, and mostly it's probably the educational diagnostician that can search and pull those records together, and you can get a better picture of the student.
So, from what I'm hearing, we have students that sometimes get lost in the system because they move a lot, they're transitional, they and their parents are not keeping up with their information. So
that's what I was going to say.
If they're with their parents. Some kids are in group homes, foster children, so that's the situation.
So we have all these kids out there. We have kids that are shooting. They come to school angry. Are these symptoms that we're missing? Are these things that we're missing, social worker? Are we missing? What are we missing?
I think it's just really just a lack of education and training on being aware of the different signs and symptoms when it comes to mental health diagnosis, and then knowing the proper resources and how to refer whenever you see something, and being able to be comfortable with having that conversation with the parent. Because really what happens is people notice. It's not that it goes unnoticed, it just goes untalked about. And so whenever we can actually just be open communicate what's going on with these kids and pull in their teachers and their principals and their parents and the school counselor and interventionist if there's one, or the whole RTI team, and get together and really just kind of have like a wraparound meeting and sit with the kid and find out what's going on. Because although most kids don't get diagnosed until 14, a lot of the symptoms they've shown since early childhood. And the thing is most psychiatrists don't want to put those type of diagnosis or labels on kids at a young age, because some things they do grow out of. I think impulsivity and ADHD, almost all kids from 2 to 8 are just wild and crazy. They can't stay on task. You got to keep reminding them. But once you get about 10, you still having these same issues. Then it's like, okay, why can't you sit down for an hour?
Right.
So something else is going on. So they don't want to always label kids with these issues just in case they have an opportunity to grow out of them. But whenever it is a behavior that's not developmentally appropriate, then we as teachers, as specialists, as staff really need to be more intentional about getting with the parents and finding out how can we help you find the resources you need to make sure your student is able to, live a well life. Because just like you would, if something's wrong with your foot, you're gonna go see your pediatrician or go talk to your physical doctor, your PCP. It's the same thing with mental health, and sometimes mental health can be exacerbated in physical symptoms because kids may not understand, well, really it's not that my head hurts, I just can't keep track of my thoughts. So they may be saying they're having a headache, and it's not even a headache.
That's funny you say that, because I hear that all the time. My head hurt. I have a headache, and I'm thinking,
did you eat today?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
You not getting enough rest last night?
Yeah. But you're saying that that's not always the case,
right? Because sometimes because kids don't understand what's going on, they may not know how to verbalize it. So it's easier to connect it to something physical, as far as like pain, for emotional pain. Right. That's why you see a lot of kids cutting and things like that, because they're having this mental, emotional pain, but they want to make it more tangible. So they cut so that they can feel something.
You know what? I was told, and correct me if I'm wrong, the cutting is something with the blood that gives them a euphoric feeling. And that euphoric feeling is what helps them release that stress and that pressure. Is that?
I think it can be for some. There's really no universal way for who cuts when.
Right.
But I know as far as what I've seen in the hospital, a lot of times cutters cut because they feel this deep depression, but they can't see it. It's like, how when your leg hurts, and it's like, oh, my leg hurts, but their heart is hurting, and they feel like they need to feel something. So they cut, and that way they have that same release. Now they got a Band-Aid, so maybe now I feel better because there's a bandage over my hurt.
So it's an outward expression of inward pain.
Absolutely.
Wow. So cutting, is that mostly depression, or is that something, a behavior, or?
It's usually a behavior of depression, and then it typically leads to like suicidal ideations and things like that. Yeah.
Wow. Ladies, so I'm a first-year teacher. I have all these kids in my room.
Child.
I went through my procedures. I've gone through all of that. I have everything laid out. But I don't know what to do about Johnny. Johnny keeps coming in this room, looking at me, I'm looking at him. And we don't know what to do with each other. I have talked to Johnny's mama. Johnny's mama said she don't know what to do now. It's up to me. I'm here with him every day. And he is driving me crazy. What do I need? I talked to my mentor teacher. She said he's just bad. He's just bad. He's just bad. Just put him over there, put him in isolation. Is that something that we need to do?
She made a good point. It should start with a staffing or RTI team. Staffing, you get together, everybody is at the table. Once you've dealt with this kid, now it's going to be a process because everything in the school district is a process. It's not going to be right now fixed.
Right.
But
what do I do?
You keep working with the parent. You keep talking to the parent.
She blocked me.
She blocked you.
The kid blocked you. They tell me that all the time.
The kid blocked me?
Kids block you.
They block the school number on their parents' phones.
But you're going to have to get everybody at the table. Me, I probably would try to solicit the help of a psychologist, or you have an interventionist on campus. You need to start right there with the resources that you have.
She said she's busy. She got about 40
She's
kids.
busy, but put me down as, because this is urgent. And
Right.
if you have your documentation of the behaviors that the student has exhibited, I
got
mean,
10 pages.
no one can really argue with that.
Right.
You know, and you need to have a staffing. I would talk to the psychologist. I would also talk to the diagnostician, because the diagnostician is the person responsible for, you know, getting all the services together, making sure that the services on the campus are carried out. And so I think if you continually talk to this diagnostician and solicit the help of a psychologist, then someone in the RTI team, somebody should be able to help put a plan together to start with some type of interventions for this student. You can't just sit there and let them just wild out and, you know,
'Cause
you're frustrated, kids are out there.
I am about to choke.
You cannot do that, so you have to meet and get a plan together to start with some interventions to help this student.
Right, because sometimes just sending them to ISS and getting that little
Right.
3-day break is not helping.
Feels so
It's not
good,
enough.
though, just not to see him and look at his face for 3 days.
And I would suggest to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
See, I'm telling y'all, she know everything. She's
so I would suggest to you in that situation where you and Johnny are not meeting eye to eye, that you kind of bottle your emotions, right? Because at this point, you have identified that it is something more
It is more.
going on with him than should be.
yes,
His
yes.
behaviors are abnormal. You've done all their teacher things that need to be done.
Right.
They're not lining up. His behavior is not being redirected. You done contacted the parent. You're not getting much home support.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
Well, what you think I should do with
Right.
it? You know, I don't know. I done tried that. I gave him over to y'all. Y'all tell me what to do.
That's what his mama told me.
Yes, I received that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so in that moment, you know, now home is not a supportive place. So again, as we started out saying, you know, to be watchful, to be aware and to be observant of what's going on. Now you see some red flags,
Right.
And so that's why I said it's important to bottle your own emotions. 23 years of education is teaching me.
It's teaching.
Me to bottle my emotions and try to find out what's going on. So now I'm going to talk to the kid. Like, you might not want to talk to me, but I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to do that relationship thing. I'm going to talk to you in a manner in which I'm not your enemy.
Right.
We are not nemesis. We are not against each other. I had a situation this week, as a matter of fact, in the classroom with the student. He had been lovely, like the entire time. We were talking tough subject in the classroom. He was the only Caucasian in a conversation of racism. But he had been lovely for like all the way up until the last 2 days of the conversation.
Right.
And all of a sudden he blows up. He wants to come. He doesn't want to come to the circle. He doesn't want to talk. And he chooses to leave the classroom rather than be in the class. So we have a conversation, and in this conversation, I tell him I want him in the classroom. I'm sorry I offended you. Like, what did I do? What can I do to rectify this? You know, I don't want to send you to the office, but you got to come back in the room. What can we do? Come out, he says, I have anger issues. So it wasn't anything about me at all. He said, I don't like you. But it wasn't that.
Right.
He had anger issues. And so that was at the core. So then I talked with him about that. So I think building that relationship with the student, and the next day he came back happy. So maybe he may be swinging on both sides, right? Because he came happily back to the classroom the next day. But we got to talk to our students.
Right. Right. 30 years experience. What have you found to be the most effective? Because as far as teaching this type of group, of kids. You taught on every level with these kids. You taught them when they were in isolation. You taught them when they were in the classroom. You taught them where you pulled them out. What has been the most effective, even small groups in the classroom?
I find that when working with the students, letting them have a part. You said a private discussion. Okay, how can we rectify what's going on? Coming up with some type of, and I know we don't like contracts because it was required, but even if it's not a contract, I've even had self-monitoring sheets when students were aware of what they were doing.
Right.
Even if I made, and you can Google.
She had some awesome ones, y'all. It worked like a charm.
And they just like, and for a lot of kids, I think it's just that time that you take to just somebody talk to me.
Right.
And somebody asks, what's going on with me today? And I get a say in maybe what's going to happen or what I would like as maybe a reward. It might not even be anything monetary, but just those things. Now, I'll pull out a sheet.
She will.
In a minute, but it's something where we can have a dialogue. Oh, excuse me. Something we can have a dialogue and something where the kid can participate in some results that you want to see. Kids really like that. And it takes some time. You have to structure your classroom and, like you say, have your activities such that, the rest of the class is not wilding out. But when you take maybe 5 minutes at the end of the day or whatever and ask the kid, okay, just bring your sheet or let me see your sheet, or I'm going to take 5 minutes to just talk to you to see how you think your day went. And sometimes we may not see eye to eye, but we'll talk about what can we do to make it better for the next day.
Y'all, we are having a great discussion about mental illness, what it looks like in your classroom, what the things that are happening and how you can try to prevent them. Give us a call. We're at 203-802-5694. Again, that's 203-802-5694. Waiting on that phone call to ring. Waiting on the phone to ring. Now, we talked about building relationships. You talked about how you help the students when they transition from high school and go into the real world. But we haven't talked about the teacher. We haven't talked about, we're not formally trained. We do not receive training at all. But yet we are expected to know what to look for. We're expected to know how to prevent. We're expected to know what to bring in our classrooms. Now, licensed social worker, how can we, as people who are not formally trained, how can we identify with knowing, Johnny right here, he may have this behavior because we already established that he can't follow procedure.
Right.
But now his mama won't take him to the doctor. What do we do? Because everything's parental consent, right?
Right. Well, I think that would come to a situation where it's like, well, is that neglect? And, you hate to throw CPS at parents, especially parents who aren't abusing their kids.
Right. You talking about physically?
Physically.
Right.
But when it comes to a point, you have to recognize that mental health is just as important as anything physical. And so if you're neglecting, you wouldn't neglect, if they were having a heart murmur, you wouldn't neglect to take them to see the doctor for their heart. So for cardiac arrest or whatever the case may be that could come from having that heart murmur, but your child is having depression in their mind and suicidal thoughts, but you're like, oh, well, he'll get over it, he'll grow out of it, and then you wake up the next day and they done swallowed 30 pills in the cabinet and you like, oh my gosh, now you want to call the doctor.
Right.
So, I don't want to say just report it to CPS, but maybe talk with the parent about what are your hesitations with going to see a doctor, and maybe get some feedback about that first.
Question: Would that be my responsibility as an educator, or is that someone else's responsibility to talk to that parent about that?
I think if you have, because most school counselors on campus now are either licensed professional counselors, LMFTs, or LCSWs. They're now like dually licensed. So I would even reach out to them on campus if you don't have an interventionist or
Right.
a diagnostician or an LSSP that's readily available. Your school counselors are always there. So I would reach out to them and let them know your concerns, and then maybe they can sit down and talk with the student, and then they can maybe be more equipped to facilitate that conversation, because they do also have a background in some type of therapeutic approach and diagnosis and things like that, because that's why they get to run the ARDs and the 504s and things like that too. So
Is that still neglect if they forget to, or the child runs out of medication? Because we've had it where
or just don't take it on the weekends.
or weekends, weekdays.
Right.
Summers.
All summer long.
Yeah.
Summers.
So, and they come back not medicated
Right.
in their full glory. Here I am. Take me.
Just as I am.
Yes. I have not been medicated.
And they'll tell you too.
Yes.
When was the last time you had your medicine? In May? What?
I had a student last year, and I noticed. He was good at first. I was like, "Oh, York," I almost called his name. You are wonderful. I have you here every day.
Right.
Then this beast showed up one day.
Not a beast.
Beast. He came with aroma,
Oh wow.
and he's already 6 feet and a big boy.
Okay.
And he showed up. I was like, "Who are you?" "Hi, Baby, be still, please." Sit down. And I couldn't figure out, because it had been like 3-4 months, and he was great. I didn't know. And he showed up. He sat down. He was just going everywhere, and that aroma was going with him. But this was the funny part.
Okay, aroma.
When he walked in the classroom, I noticed he sat down, and the whole class shifted to the right or to the left. And they were kind of sitting on top of each other, and I'm thinking, this is strange. Why is everybody on that side? Because, we're working in our groups, our small groups, and no one would work in his group. But then I started going around, and I was like, okay, something's not right, because this went on for a week, and he was just, and every time I called home, nobody answered.
Right.
So I finally went to all his other teachers, and they said, "Oh, you got Jim Bob." "Yeah." "Oh, he acting up? He got that aroma?" I said, "Yeah." "Oh, he's not taking his medication." I said, "That's what's wrong with him?" They said, "Yeah." They said, "Now, what you gonna have to do?" And then they told me all the steps I had to do. But I'm thinking, Mom, do you not see this? Because they said that's one thing that we would notice is he will not take a bath. He refused to touch water. Refused to touch water.
Wow.
So we know no soap,
Right. Nothing.
deodorants.
No rag.
You know what? I would have been happy with Axe. That at that period, I would have. I know, right? I would have taken Axe spray and happy. But we had to sit like that until the mom finally said, "Oh, okay, I'll make him take it." He said he didn't want to take it. He was not going to take it. I don't like how you make me feel, baby, but we love how you act.
Yeah.
So in those cases, should I have turned her in? Would y'all? Let's start over here. Regina, would you have turned her in?
Well, my first thought when you said he didn't take a bath, I'm like, okay, and I guess you have to have a little bit of empathy.
Yeah.
Because, well, not only for the child, but for the parent. We see this student how many hours a day? This is a constant situation for them. And so you have to think about mom's mental state as well. Because they're overwhelmed, stressed out. We don't know what the finances are.
True.
We don't know what the situation. So I would call mom, I would talk to him. But like you said, if it's a constant thing, it is neglect, it's abuse. If this is something that this child needs to function. But I would talk to my parents are dealing with, I gotta have a roof. Did they have water? It's just a whole lot of things that
They
can
had
come.
water because his sister wasn't like that.
Oh, I had a sister that wasn't like
Yeah,
that.
sister wasn't like that.
Okay. Well, if they consistently, she was neglecting the situation then. And so I would tell Mom, but after a while, if it's bad, but how did he behave in the classroom? How did he behave?
Off the wall.
Oh, okay.
And he was a big boy, and he had a jacket.
Oh, some jackets. That was loaded. Obviously, let me get ready to take it. No, you gotta leave the jacket on.
The hoodie is
The jacket you done wore for 3 weeks straight, so just leave that one
It
on.
can stand up by itself. And that's why everyone was shifting to the left because of the jacket. The jacket. And it had a hood on it, of course. But yeah.
So I think a lot in that too. I'm just a teacher, right? So we talk. We talk about aromas. We talk about bathing. We talk
Regularly.
about deodorant.
Every day.
I even gave my 8th period. Woo. Guys, make sure you wash your clothes when you go home this weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of times those things are touchy subjects,
Right.
and we're often afraid to go into them.
Right.
However, if you love your kids, right, your kids typically receive what you're saying and
Right.
don't see it as an offense.
Right.
They know you're telling them these things for the betterment.
Right.
And then again, building that relationship where your classroom is one that is safe.
Right.
So we have these conversations about how your actions affect other people and how your actions affect the environment that we're in.
Right.
I think those are just very important things that happen even in situations where there is a lack of medication.
Right.
In situations where there's a lack of medication, again, back to the education, I think we need to sit down and talk to the parents about the seriousness of it, and don't just take for granted that because they're on the medications, the parents understand fully
Right.
what that
Right.
means and how that plays out in the classroom.
Right.
So I think rather than turning the parent in the first time, you have that conversation. You said earlier, like, what do we do? Like, how do we fix this? Well, I believe we got to bridge the gap between the school and the home.
Right.
You have to bring
Right.
the parent into the situation so they can understand the true impact of it.
Right.
Right.
Now, after that, now that's abuse, that's neglect, and you just don't want to, and
just not
therefore
doing
you need to deal with the consequences, and we turn that over to someone else. But
Right.
I do believe that we have those conversations, and maybe not us, maybe the people that are in charge, because we've done that documentation that we needed to do in recording these behaviors,
Right.
and we're passing them over to someone that can really do something about it. But even as a teacher, if you have a good relationship with the parent, you can say, look, these are some things that he's doing in class, and oftentimes, ooh, they ain't been on their medicine. They would tell.
The parent will say it.
Yes, the parent would tell you.
Right.
You are being free to have that conversation. Like, well, I can really tell in the classroom.
Yes, we can. Yes, we
So,
can.
yeah.
I have told students, just because you're on medication, they say, well, I haven't had my medicine. Even if you take medicine, some other things have to go along with that as your treatment. You can't just think medicine is what the panacea is, cure all.
It's not.
Something else, some structure, some other things have to go along with taking medication. So don't. And if you do have a relationship with that student, you can talk to them privately.
So when we go back to that, the medicine is not the answer to everything. I go back to the student that I talk with, and when he said I have anger problems, I'm like, I do too. So anger problem is not the it's okay for you to just unleash on people.
Right.
That's Mr.
Right.
Franklin's way of saying, oh, you got something wrong, Krista, with the way you were reacting. It's my awareness for me to respond differently. And when I said that, I could see that there was a shift. Like, no one has ever told me that before. I can just walk around and do whatever I want to do and say, I got anger problems. No, that's not good enough.
Right. And you have to make students understand that half of the students, do they even understand, you know, I work with students with disabilities, but do they even understand what that disability is, what that means? And so I talk to students and they say, oh, nobody ever told me.
Right.
So just like you said, that same conversation, you have that, this is what your disability says, you know, this is what it means. But it doesn't mean that you can't A, B, C.
Right, because they take...
And I think that's an important point, because they get these diagnoses and these disabilities and they feel like it's an excuse for them to not do what they need to do, or gives them an opportunity to be able to be different. But you still have to treat them like you treat everyone else, and you have to remind them that whenever you get out of school, at 18 in the real world, don't nobody care if you got bipolar, you schizophrenic, you got depression.
You're laid on the side of the road with everybody else.
No one
It's
cares.
not an excuse.
Right. So you need to figure out a way to manage your disability and be able to work through it, because ultimately it's gonna come a time where mama, even if mama ain't really taking good care of you now, she really ain't gonna take care of you in a minute. So how are we preparing you to live with your diagnosis in a way that you are still able to be a productive individual in life?
Right. You said something earlier that was really good. We were talking about economic status and how people of lower economic status a lot of times are less educated on the mental illness that they need treatment on. Elaborate on that a little more for the people, because they need to understand that as well.
Well, really, it's just about access. The lower your economic status is, if you're living in poverty or in areas where you don't have great access to psychiatrists, or you don't have the amount of money it is to pay for psychiatrists, especially child and adolescent psychologists, because they're few and far between. Most psychiatrists don't want to even deal with that side of psychiatry because of the labels that it puts on children.
So do they have designated? They do have designated psychiatrists for children.
Right.
Okay.
When you specialize in psychiatry, then they decide whether or not they're going to just do adult and geriatric, or they're going to do child and adolescent. And some only do adolescents and up, and so it just kind of depends. So, but lower income families don't have the same access, or they may not even have the time, because if your mom is only making $5-8 an hour at Walmart, she's gonna have to work more hours. So being able to see a therapist 3 nights a week, or go to a doctor's appointment on 9 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, is not a feasible option, because you don't have the time, or you don't have the money to even pay for it. And then even if you have Medicaid, which is insurance, they're only going to pay a portion, so you're still going to be responsible for that copay. And if you can't pay that, I'm telling you, ain't nobody going to see you, because these people went to school forever, they want their money.
So is that a reason why sometimes our kids are lacking medicine? Because they can't pay the copay.
Can't make the copay, can't pay for the prescription.
So they go without. Or I have seen it, I think we had that student that would split the medicine in half. And they would come to class with just half, I think that was us, and they would split it and they would take it every other day, just a half a pill.
Wow.
I had a student this summer. I did a summer program this summer, and I was the administrator of an elementary site. And there was one particular student, I loved her to. She tried to kill all of us.
Oh, great. Those are the good ones.
She was one of my favorites. Oh, my gosh. She was on a program, and her family had been working with a counselor, with a psychiatrist. And again, she was so young, because she was 5.
Oh, wow.
She was so young that they did not want to diagnose her with anything.
Right.
So they were working with the parents, and the parents were awesome. Both mom and dad were great. They were working with her. They were giving her the strategies that they were teaching her. she ended up getting put out of the site before the end of the site because she couldn't stop hitting people, but she was so loving. She was just beautiful. I just loved her. But that whole thing about, they won't put her on any medication because she's so young.
Right.
We're waiting because we don't have the money.
Right.
So we're waiting on it to see what's going to play out and how is this going to play out. We're only getting her in maybe once a month or, once every 2 weeks when she needed to be in quite frequently
Right.
to really be trying to help her with the skills that she needed to cope with her impulsiveness to just hit people.
Right.
So definitely our economics, right, play a huge part in whether or not we were going to get the health care mentally that we need. And it also, I believe, just like with education, the economics is going to play a strong part in whether or not I really need it because of my intelligence, my education. So my knowledge level, is tied to my economics many times. And I'm not going to think it's that important, so I'm not going to do it. It's not going to be worth
That's
it.
a good point.
So it brings to my mind about what you said. She was so young, and you do not want to label her. We have so many kids in elementary that fail a grade. And I'm wondering, is it because there's something else there and we can't diagnose them? Because they're so young. And because I hear of so many students that say, oh, I failed first grade.
Yeah.
Oh, I failed kindergarten. Oh, and I'm thinking,
How did you fail these grades?
yeah, how did you fail first grade? What did you do?
Right.
I can't ask, what you do?
Right.
Because they really don't know, especially if they're the kid that's the defiant one, and because by the time you get them in middle school or high school, sometimes they're already calmed down or they've already started their medication. But it just brought to my attention. I'm wondering if that's what's happening to a lot of our students, that age gap and not able to diagnose them in the education.
Well, I mean, it's not that they're not able to. They just don't
You don't
necessarily
want to label
want
them.
to.
She's
right.
schizophrenic and bipolar.
Right.
At 5.
At 5.
And then put her on heavy medication. So, I understand, but
It
it's
could
also
be a disservice.
Yeah, because I have to think about this. A lot of kids, are they getting it from their parents?
Every behavior is learned.
Well, learned or hereditary.
That's what I'm saying, genetics.
So
Because a
we
lot of
definitely see it somewhere.
Yeah, because I was reading a study and they said autism, ADHD, bipolar, major depression, and schizophrenic are hereditary.
Some of that stuff is
It's genetics.
Some of it's
Genetics.
genetic.
Remember okay, let me calm down. Remember we had that boy that told me to go die?
Oh my goodness.
If it wasn't for her, y'all, if it was not for Mrs. Regina Turner,
12 years in
Then what-
education.
Probably both sides. Because she was the calm one. She was the calm one. But I know when she turned up, okay, it's time for you to turn down. Let's calm the situation.
he told me to die. You need to go die. I hope you die. Was it a heart attack or something?
He was descriptive.
Yes.
She went straight to Millwood.
His mama comes up there, and then she explains, well, he's like me. We're schizophrenic. We're bipolar. What does that have to do with me dying? Well, he told me that too. So now you need you yes. Yeah, she said he tells me that all the time, and so you should be more understanding.
Well, just because he's saying don't make it okay.
It does not. You as mama, I don't have to die right now. I mean, if you want to take that, you can. I'm not going to die. I'm not about to die because your baby won't be dead. But hereditary, you once you meet the parent, it's like,
Yes.
And
Every time.
Okay, so what we gonna do now?
Every time.
yeah. We have someone in the audience, y'all. If I could turn the camera on, y'all will have a show. I mean, she could have her own show, literally. She was on here a few weeks ago. Just.
So it doesn't fall
No.
from the tree, the apple,
And
the
they-
behavior.
Yeah, these are major issues. I mean, autism, I thought it was just a gene, that an extra chromosome gene
Right.
that the child would get. But come to find out, that extra chromosome gene is in the family. It's come from either your mom, your dad, or someone down the line, someone in your family, and they can trace that gene if that baby will have it. But I don't know. For me, yeah, you guys are parents. How would it would make me feel some kind of way if I knew I gave this to my baby? But that's me.
I think it's done, but what do you do? What are your strategies for dealing with this student or your child, so that he can be successful? You have to have a job. You have to have some type of, and that's one of the things.
I don't have time.
That's part of the problem.
Autism, they're social norms, but you do have kids that are high functioning that they are able to, but you have to put things in place for kids, your own child, your students that you teach to be successful. If they're exhibiting these things have to be put in place, so that, what did we do with, I'm thinking this student, what did I do when he said that? Did I just...
You did real well.
Okay.
So you did well.
Because I think I almost jumped over the desk or flipped the desk, or something almost went wrong, and you did well. You grabbed him. You grabbed him.
You have to have and I think I know the parent, but some people, the parents don't really know how to parent.
Right.
You have a lot of young parents that they're really, for whatever reason, working or living that life or doing whatever. Some kids are not getting the parenting that they need, so they come to school, and it's just, I've been doing what I wanted to at home, and when I come to school, you're not gonna tell me that I have to follow rules. So
that's true, because I met a lady not too long ago, and her son has clear signs of autism. She knows it. She's an educator, but she's not ready to admit to it yet.
That's
Just gonna let your son suffer.
So, and that's what I thought of. How do you deal with that when you're not ready to accept it?
I think, especially with autism, and depending on where they fall on the spectrum, you have to, the earliest intervention you can get them is necessary, because even if they are high functioning as far as intelligence and those abilities, usually their social norms are way off. You have to say, baby, you can't do that. Right. Exactly. So the earliest, and although I know you'll go through an initial shock, like, oh my gosh, this is my baby, why are they going through this? God, what happened? If you're spiritual, whatever the case may be.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think we as adults, as educators, as parents, we have to put our emotion, like she said, bottled up. We have to put it to the side to make sure we're doing what's best for our children.
Yeah, because this baby started school.
Right.
So that was one of, going back to that original question of what do we do, and bridging the gap and bringing the parents on board, educating the parents. I know we can't mandate it,
Right.
but we want to make them feel like it is. We need to make parents feel like you are a part of this process.
Right.
And then we know that we really can't. So then we deal with what we have.
Right.
Where we are. And the whole thing of helping the student, we have to prepare them.
Right.
And so that whole thing of helping them understand what it is I'm dealing with cannot be enough.
Right.
You have ADHD. Okay, so that means I can bounce off the wall and I can spin around. No, it means this. And so the flip side, which I have noticed that we do not do in public education, is okay, so when you're feeling this way, these are some things that you should do to help you get out of this situation.
But is that because we have a lack of education on that, or lack of knowledge on it, we as educators? And not knowing, or you're talking about from the parent's perspective?
I'm talking from the school system to the parent and to the student. So,
because we're not taught.
But there are some people who know.
Right.
So I shared the same idea with one of the SPED specialists in a school that I worked in. And she said, oh, that sounds real good. That sounds like something we should be doing. So it's unconventional, but I think as educators, we have to always be thinking progressively.
Right.
We have to be looking at the problems that are reoccurring and coming up with an idea or a strategy to attack the problems. If we see the students are having the same symptoms, or year after year they're doing the same thing, then we begin to intervene. Part of that intervention is a diagnosis, it's a prognosis. So when you get the prognosis, you share it.
Right.
You share it
And I
with
think
the student so they can deal with the problem that they happen to be born.
Because they have to learn the self-control. They have to learn what they have and how to manage
how
it.
to, yes.
And I think whenever they do the 504 plans, I've sat through a few of them. They do outline, okay, these are strategies that we can do in the classroom. Here's what the teachers can do. Here's what you can do. Here are safe spaces. Here's cool down spots if they have mood disorders or whatever. But the problem is I don't think that they give teachers access to that information. So they put all this stuff, because the state requires it. Right. So they put all this stuff in a plan, but the people who need to be implementing the plan don't know about it.
Well, I'll tell you on that. They give it to some of the in most cases you receive it as an educator, but when they give it to you, you have a stack of 50.
Right.
You have all the kids who have special education, who have mental disabilities, and you have all of their requirements at one time. And here you go.
Right.
And it's like, okay, when do I read this? Okay, what am I supposed to do with this? Okay, I'm supposed to keep it. But then you're in trouble once something happens and you didn't follow the plan. What plan? When did you get it?
Yeah.
And you looking
Many teachers.
you running around saying, well, what? And then once you read it, you're like, oh, okay. But I have 50 I need to go through. When do I take that time to go through and then understand, or sit down with somebody to understand, okay, this kid is here, this kid is there.
I agree with that. I agree with that in terms of we as teachers are not fully educated on the ins and the outs of the document that's coming in front of us. No, we do know that we are supposed to read that thing and follow it by the law. We need to be doing these things.
Keep it in your
But
classroom.
I do believe that it would be helpful to have that sit down time, especially if you're not part of the art.
Right. Don't you guys have like a SPED team member in your PLC?
No.
You don't.
What?
You guys don't have like within your
An active
PLC an active one that can actually
one that speaks their mind.
Active person should when you get these documents, because if you teach a student, you should have that student's accommodations.
Right.
Okay. And so if you're meeting in a PLC or if you have co-teachers, you should be able to sit down as you guys would plan structured time and talk about, if you have any questions.
That's why she was great. I'm
So-
telling you, she was great.
I would ask.
I was gonna say that's very nice.
That
Where
was
do they do
her.
that at?
That was her. She would do that.
When you are in
don't do that
these
in Atlanta.
meetings or sit down time, so that SPED person should be a specialist. And so when you say things like, okay, so how should I handle this? Then they should come back with an answer other than, oh, I think you've been doing well. You do really well. You do awesome. That should be a different answer.
Well, if you feel like you should say, well, I need more suggestions. Can you give me more suggestions? As you look at this student's accommodations, that person should be able, now we don't know everything and it takes years of experience, but you should be able to tell that person, I need some more suggestions. Can you come work with me? Do you have time to come by and give me some suggestions
That's why she was
on
the best.
how I can
Yes.
help the student?
I bow.
Right.
Because that's not real life.
And I was gonna say that
She
doesn't
was-
happen.
It was real life.
It was real life for her.
It was real life for me.
It was. That's
And
how I learned so much.
But I think it's communication. You have to talk to each other on that professional level. And you have to. Oh. Well, there's
You
You know what? Let's bring up your situation.
Yeah, talk about it.
Your special ed situation that you had.
Speak on it,
We
Candace
worked
Franklin.
together.
So that this is not always
Because we
structured in
remember.
with the kiddos. And sometimes it's people you work with.
Yeah, because
Speak
remember
on it.
her. She had. Y'all, let me tell you. Miss Turner, me and Miss Virginia Turner, we had a good relationship. We balanced. Now, she's one. She when I tell you she knew everything, the law, she knew what to do, she knew how to handle a kid. I mean, it was great. You did.
I don't know everything. She calmed me down, but I tried my best because ultimately you're there for the
Kids,
students.
yes.
It's all about the kids, and I let myself get in the way sometimes. But those kids know I'm straight down to earth.
Yeah.
But I'm all about what's best for the
Right.
student. And if I can help a teacher, because everybody doesn't understand disability. Everybody hasn't, like you said, been trained in how to handle the students. This is what I've done. And so through the years, there are just different strategies that I know to use. They might not work all the time, but I keep trying and I keep trying to learn so that I can help somebody who doesn't know. And I make it known that I'm accessible. Just ask me, I don't mind helping. So you gotta find somebody.
She was a gold mine.
I was finna say that's
And I was so happy because Krista, on the other hand,
Had a different situation.
she had this was just 2 doors down, and she had another
not 2 doors.
2 doors down, and it was night and day. Now, when you have a specialist in your room that's supposed that was the title of him or her, was a specialist for special ed. But when they are special ed,
Come on.
what do you do when you trying to keep the kid? See our audience, y'all. If I could turn that camera on our audience. But what do you do when your help needs help and act just like the kids? And you trying to figure out, okay, who needs the medication? You or the kids? So I'm sorry. Just tell them a little bit how do you function in that situation when you have these kids and the teacher that's helping you is the problem.
So I am not the specialist in that because I did not handle all those situations
Properly.
professionally.
Oh, come on.
However, I think what I did that was good and right was unfortunately he was lacking social
We believe he was autistic.
skills. Yes, and I believe that he knew or his family knew because I could tell that he worked strategies, and it was evident that he would do particular things because he had learned how to do that particular thing. But when a new encounter came, he didn't know how to handle it.
Right.
And so I had to teach him how to deal with that social thing. This is what we have to do. This is the way, literally. So then on the flip side, that made him feel like a kid because I'm telling him how to handle the situations, properly. And so because I had to break that down for him because he was responding very poorly with the students. It caused a division within the classroom because how do you do that? How do you teach a grown person in a professional role strategies to do his or her job without making them feel offensive because they have not announced that they have a disability.
Right.
So,
But you know what? It made me think. It probably goes back to the haves and the have-nots. He was, his parents had the money to teach him how to function.
Right.
So he learned how to function. But you know me, I could see through
Right. The
this
routine.
fake movement, this
Right.
learned movement,
Right.
that it was not authentic, but
Right.
it was learned.
Right.
And so I think that in itself set something off with him. But I think it's the same thing though. I think the same thing that we said with the students would have been best in that situation. Building a real relationship.
Right.
You know, starting with that, building a real relationship. But you can't build a real relationship upon a lie.
Right.
Ooh.
So that was the first thing.
a whole nother
So if we
conversation.
have a true relationship, then we can play off of each other.
Right.
You know my strength and I see yours.
Yeah.
She the fireball, you the calm one. She done took over my role. Let me come down.
Right.
We gotta balance it out. But that's a good relationship in knowing one another. But I think even working in a situation like that, I think it starts with that relationship.
Right.
It continues with conversation.
Right.
And being kind to one another. And then sharing that and being open to receive what the other person is saying. I think would be good in 2020. These would have been very good things to do.
You didn't do that?
Most of it. But again, it was built on that faulty foundation.
Y'all, we have run out of time.
Unfortunately,
Wow, that went so
I
fast.
did.
We have had a great time.
It was a wonderful conversation.
Wonderful conversation. We talked about everything about how we need to educate our parents, how we're trying to transition these students into society and making sure they are productive citizens in society and not using their disability as a crutch or an excuse.
Yes.
So I want to give y'all a little teacher nugget. You know, make sure you are taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
That's one thing we neglect about ourselves. We only have one person, one life to live, and make sure that that one life we live it to our best. But we got to take care of this, and we got to take care of all of this. All right. So before I leave, though, I want to give y'all a little advice. There is a website you can go to. It is www.samhsa.gov. And it stands for Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. It is a government organization that if you need some type of assistance, you can go to that website and they'll find a local place for you. They'll find a place that can get you the assistance you need, the help you need. Again, it's www.samhsa.gov. The phone number for some of you who do not have access to the web is 1-800-662-HELP. Help, for those of you that do not know the numbers and letters, 4357. So that's 1-800-662-4357. If you find anything or you know someone that may need help, this is a place you can go get the assistance. 24 hours, 365 days a year. And I want to say thank y'all, ladies. It has been wonderful, wonderful. My next show is on the 23rd of September. We're talking to the parents this time.
Come on, parents.
We're talking to parents to see their point of view and see if we can educate each other and help each other with this journey that we have to take.
Absolutely.
All right, don't forget tomorrow, 9 p.m., The Man Cave. Phenomenal show. Phenomenal. And we are about to close out. We had a great time.
Yes, thank
Appreciate
you.
you. And teachers are talking.
Oh yeah.
So,